everybody. Welcome back. This is actually our second episode of Hot Mics. Last time we were together, me and Micah, we were at the NRECA Safety Leadership Summit, and we had put our heads together and we said, listen, we both kind of have similar roles, even though we're on two different sides of the industry and we have different constituents or stakeholders. But we start talking about safety, especially utility safety. We have so much more in common than we have differences. And so we said, hey, look, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do a Hot Mics podcast. We'll try to do it monthly. We'll do it like this on Zoom. We'll have a cool little backdrop. You can see we got our Hot Mics logo going on. And we're just a couple of high-tech rednecks trying to get it done. And so, Micah, hey, man, thanks for making yourself available and making this a thing.
Dude, this is killer, man. You and I shared, again, that passion for trying to do this. And I applaud your let's go after it. Well, we don't need a plan yet. We don't need an itemized list of what it's going to take. Let's just go do it. And I appreciate that approach to it. It's really exciting. And again, man, we just want to help. We want to create some content, create some conversation that'll bridge the gap between your space and my space, and also help anybody that would tune in. So I'm excited, man. Let's get after it.
That's it. And we both had put our heads together and said, listen, what's sort of our theme for this thing? And we kind of believe that we had it's incumbent upon us to pay it forward, right, and pay it back, or however you want to explain it. But we talk a lot about in our industry developing people and develop the industry and developing the workforce. But what are we doing to develop safety professionals? And me and you both have this place in our heart for the folks that are coming behind us. And so we figure month over month we'll have discussions that are relevant for a safety professional to know or help to develop. And what we're hoping, right, is to get some feedback. So as we start to get a little bit of a following here, hoping folks say, hey, listen, I'd like to learn more about this, or, what do you guys think about that? And so maybe it'll grow into something. What do you think?
I think you're definitely hitting the nail on the head. Had a little bit of a chance to experiment with this idea in a class we just did at our statewide school. We have a journeyman workshop that we offer several times a year, and we totally reevaluated the content, threw the old playbook out, got a new playbook. And one of the things we do day one, Mike, is just, what do you want to know? What do you need to know? What is something you wish you had more training on? What is something you wish you would have been exposed to more? And so you create two things. You give them a voice into their own knowledge, and you give them a voice in their own training of having a space to speak. And then you cater the content for that need. Do we need, helicopter hand signals this week? Maybe not. What do we need from you? And so I love it. Again, we encourage everybody to give us feedback. Tell us what works, what don't. And if there's anything you want to hear from his perspective or mine, or anything that we can research and do, let's do that legwork for him, Mike.
I hear you, brother. And, when you were talking, it made something pop into my head about, how industry or how organizations look at their safety people. Kind of look at a safety person like you pull them off the shelf and they're the technical expert, all things safety. And, it's a spectrum. I'll give the group a little bit about my background before we get too far into the weeds here. But, I started out as a tree trimmer. I dropped out of high school at my second ninth grade, believe it or not. So officially I have a ninth grade education. I did go back and get my GED. But, I was one of these knuckleheads that was like, school ain't for me. I'm going to go out there and do my own thing, hard-headed. I started out as a tree trimmer because my uncle said he was going to straighten me out. I think you've heard this story before, but
yeah.
He put me to work. He thought he was going to work it out of me, and all he did was light a fire in me because, I didn't know it, but what I needed was something to apply that energy to. And, climbing up in these big, tall trees and working around power lines. And that just did it for me. So that was the basis of my career. And I got hired on with the local utility, and I went through the lineman program, became trouble man, crew leader, went through that whole gig before I got into leadership. And I didn't get into safety till later, honestly. They rotated me into a position where I have responsibility for safety, not like a lot of folks listening here today. Maybe you were a lineman, maybe you were a project manager, or maybe you were some operational leader, and now you're the safety guy. I didn't have any formal education about safety. I knew how safety was applied in the setting, right, out on the crew. And that's one good thing I think, about our industry is, safety is kind of cooked in at every level. And does it always hit the mark probably not, and we could talk a lot about that on this podcast, but we talk a lot about safety and how safety is everybody's responsibility. So I came to the job with that basic approach to safety, but I didn't know about safety management systems. I didn't understand about industrial hygiene. I didn't understand about respiratory protection programs, all these things that somebody thinks they're grabbing a safety guy off the shelf, they're going to know all these things, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, not at all. And I love the history of that. I think it's important to lay that groundwork. So I'll do a quick piece on myself. 20 years almost in the industry now, 14 at an electrical co-op here in the state of South Carolina, and then 3 years now at my statewide association. And I think you and I share a very similar path as a lot of folks in our industry. Yeah, no school for me, thanks. Graduated 2 weeks later, been working ever since, and got a real eye-opening experience going back to the co-op because, yeah, school had only just begun when you get back there and get into some of this technical stuff. But we talked about this the other week, man. That's the beautiful thing about our industry. If we'll recognize it and we'll take our pride and put on the shelf. There's no guy that knows it all. I hadn't met him yet. You're pretty close, but I hadn't met him yet. And if you're not willing to say, I don't know, I need some help. What can you learn from me? What can I learn from you? Man, you're going to struggle in this space as a safety professional. I took over for a guy who was like a Mount Rushmore kind of figure in our state. And my first 6-7 months, I was like, man, the weight of filling into his role, and he was that guy, and he was revered and respected. But, about 6-7 months in, the good Lord helped me with, man, you're never going to be him, and you're not supposed to be him. You go be you. And recognize your own weaks and strengths and weaknesses, put your pride on the shelf, and be willing to learn from people. Like when you started off saying, we want to help the next group, man, I had some people lay the groundwork for me, Mike, that I'll never be able to repay. I'm sure you did too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about exposure, right? That's just how human beings learn things. And, you can read books and you can watch videos, but until you're actually given that responsibility and have to work through that, it doesn't really sink in. And so my advice for anybody listening is, figure out how you can get involved in things, get outside your comfort zone. If there's a new issue or a new challenge within your company or organization that they're looking for somebody to help solve, throw your hat in the ring. I know everybody's trying to manage their workload. The administrative burdens is the number one killer for the safety guys' time. But if you can identify something that's in your wheelhouse, or maybe it's something that you can work on. Well, in my job now, I do a lot more committee work than I've ever done. And it's really opened my eyes. You start to sit at the table you want to talk about experts. Now, these folks are, they tend to be like they're experts in that thing. Maybe they're experts in a couple things, but they're experts at that thing. And man, you can learn a bunch. I joke, and I think you were hanging with Brent Jeffries, but with Bear Meters, and we have a joke. He calls me utility generalist, utility safety generalist, USG, and because I told him, I said, in our roles, we're kind of like generalists. We don't really kind of know everything all the way through it, but we have enough touch points that we know how to get the information to people that they need. Now, our core responsibility, we tend to really kind of know that. Our internal safety program, how we manage events, how we report things, but like branching out. And so you have this core, you're sort of your safety generalist, and then you have sort of these folks that are, very targeted in what they do for a living. So you're a industrial hygienist. That's a part, your typical safety person is not going to have the training and expertise to really go after some of these things. So knowing somebody or knowing where to go to get that information is so important. And, I think that the more that you get involved in things and the more that your company, your organization will allow you to get involved in things, the better it is for you to grow.
100%. And I'm 3.5 years in my safety role at my statewide association here in South Carolina. And one of the biggest things that I've learned is that I can be a resource, not only for just the information or the knowledge or skill set that I may have, but I can do the legwork where others may not. I think that's a hat that a safety professional can wear because as well as I do, standards are changing, policies change, procedures change, work practices change, industry codes may change. Our National Electric Safety Code gets revised certain years, and every 3 years, I think 3 to 5 years. And so what can I do? I can just be a resource for my cooperative membership. I can be a resource for others in class to help do the legwork to never know it all. But man, can I point you in the right direction? Can I get you that base work you're talking about? Can I get you ground level to where I'm not doing everything for you? I'm helping you with it. You know what I'm saying? They get their own skin in the game too. I think that's huge, especially for this next generation. If we can empower them to bring their own, worth and value to this industry and this space, not spoon feed anybody. I think there's growth there for that.
Yeah, we're advocates. If you think about it that way, so you're advocating for the interest of the people that you're responsible for, and for your organization. Safety people have really two jobs. One is to save lives, but the other is to protect the organization. There's a lot of risk, and you talk about risk management, whether it's we're dealing with our workman's compensation insurance, or we're dealing with on the contractor side, our relationships with the employer, the host employer, the utilities that bring us on the system. You have to manage risk, and so you want to make sure not just that you're protecting people, but that you're putting processes in place that help the whole organization be successful. And when you were talking a few minutes ago, you talked about your new role in the statewide, and that's something I didn't fully recognize. I knew about co-ops. We had co-ops in the area here. We interact with the co-ops a little bit, but when I started to understand it scales up. You have these statewide organizations that really take some responsibility. And you guys do a lot at the statewide, right? It's not just advocating, but you do a lot of training and stuff like that too. Is that right?
Yeah, and the kind of story that goes along with the cooperative piece for those states who have a statewide association, man, just speaks into that rural small town community having a larger voice. And so how can 18 or 19 shared cooperatives across the state have a greater impact? Well, they formed the association many years ago for help and representation with legal, communication, safety, training, outreach, PR work, all of that. So that helps create a voice on the legislative side, the safety side, all these different aspects to where we can come together as a group and share information, but also speaking to the industry versus each individual cooperative doing it on their own. So I love being a part of it. I think the partnership we have here in our state is second to none. And we have a really good relationship with those, even outside of the training and safety aspect that I get to see. It's pretty unique. It's awesome.
Yeah, Manica doesn't have the exact same structure, but it does scale up, and we're kind of like from the ground floor up is how we're scaled organizationally. So NECA chapters, that's where the rubber hits the road. So they have, locally they have relationships with organizations, local area-wide agreements with labor, working locally with their customer base to help our contractors be successful in that particular market. Every market is different around the country. And then it scales up to different districts, and we have districts across the country. I mean, one advantages I have is there's one district, one NECA district for what we call outside line. That's our utility contractors. So it's just one district called District 10. There's 9 other districts, and they're all regionally based. But District 10 is all of our outside line contractors. And then within that district, there's only 7 chapters. So I think there's 200 and some other chapters in NECA, but I only have responsibility, thank God, to interact with 7 of them. My partner, his name's Wes Wheeler. One day we'll have him with us and have him talk a little bit about his side of the house. But he's an inside wireman, so he deals with residential, industrial, commercial electricians. And he's got such a larger scale of stakeholders that he just doesn't have all the time in the day to do some of the cool things that I get to do. And when I see you're out and about and you're posting your activity, it looks like a lot like what I've been doing, getting out there, interacting, shaking hands, getting on the job sites. So you've had a couple busy weeks since we were last together. What have you been up to?
Well, came off the road of an interesting perspective, by the way, hearing how your organization is kind of panned out. I'm learning from you right now, but saw you in Dallas, man. Came home straight to that journeyman workshop, which was a week-long class at our training center we have, where we host classes all throughout the year. And then part of my role in the organization as the loss control training director is we offer in-person safety meetings at all our membership cooperatives, and a certain amount every year. So we travel to each co-op, provide safety meetings for not only the operations guys, but the inside employees as well. Engineering, operations, service management, accounting, dispatchers, anybody in the organization, we can provide training for them as well. And again, depending on the co-op size and scale and size of their footprint and their territory, that could be a couple days, or just be a visit where I get to go and spend the day and come back. And you're right. We try to do not only a safety meeting, but we try to coordinate crew visits as well, to where we can go out with the actual safety director at that co-op and visit the guys, get on ground level, talk with them just a minute, do observations of their trucks and equipment and their safe work practices, but just try to connect with them, because one of the things I'm really proud of our organization and our department, Loss Control and Training, for doing here recently is just shifting the narrative, Mike, to making sure that we understand that it's about the people, and I care about you first and foremost, above and beyond what any rule might say or mandate that we have to do. It's beyond rules, and if I can connect with you on a different level, then they're not necessarily rules anymore. It's just the right thing to do. And so trying to make sure we're visible to our membership and to the guys on the crew. So it's not, oh, there's the safety guy again. What's he going to gig me on now? That's terminology we're throwing away. And it's conversations that we're reshaping to ask them questions. I'm not going to call out everything I may see on the job site. How can I just say, hey, did we check off all the boxes today? Not figuratively, but how was your tailgate today? Can I see it? How was your pre-job discussion? What do you think about the setup that you have now? Anything you change? Anything you do different? And again, making sure it's a connection, not a moment where one of the greatest pieces of advice that a guy gave me back in my home co-op was safety and culture used to be an "I got you" moment, where we were going around getting people, and it's an "I got you" moment. It's a "I care about you. I got your back. I'm not out to get you." It's not "I'm turning you in," or "Look what you did," or "You broke a rule and that's your downside is going to make me look good." We got to get away from any of all that leftover baggage, man. No safeties. I got you. I've stumbled too, and I may stumble again in the future. And what can we do to grow out of that and do better?
Yeah, when you talked about getting out on the job sites, how important that is, I couldn't agree more. That field leadership, that field presence. I don't even want to say field leadership, just the presence, just the regular occurrence that you're interacting with the crew. The safety guy. It depends on your organization, what the responsibilities are. But there's some cases where the safety guy might get out on a job site maybe once every couple of weeks. Maybe there's hundreds of miles between each of his crews, and he just can't get around as much as they can. And one of the things that we do as an industry, I think it's probably pretty universal, is we don't put enough support systems around the safety group. We narrow it down to its smallest possible ratio. How many safety persons per crew. I think it's the same issue we have with field leadership, whether it's general foremen, supervisors, whatever you call them, that frontline leader. How are we setting that person up for success so they could be on the job site? I mentioned earlier about administrative load, just how that can kill your whole day. If you're on work management calls, or you're getting brought in to be a subject matter expert, or there's been an incident and now you're sitting on an incident review, or you're reviewing job briefings, sitting at a desk going through papers of job briefings. I mean, it could kill your whole day. And how much time do you really spend on the job site, which is where you have the best influence? And can it happen often enough that it's not a big deal, that you're an actual member of the crew and they appreciate that? And then the conversation is, oh, what's he looking for? Then it's like, well, what can he help me with? Right. That's when I've always thought you got it, when they start asking you to help them with things on the job site, solve problems for them. And that just comes with being available and being on the job site as frequently as you can. Do you have any tips for folks that might be listening, how to free your schedule up a little bit?
Man, to the point of us a few minutes ago, I'll take some tips as well on how to do it. As a statewide guy, it can get kind of busy on a calendar. Making sure across the board, Mike, I would say that that the entire company and culture is on a shared value and a shared purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that would be where I would start, and a lot of my safety directors have that freedom and liberty to go up the channel and align themselves with what the company's purpose is. Before I left my co-op, we had a chance to do that. We had a mission statement on the wall. It was really long. Nobody could memorize it, right? And it was like, what are we really doing here? And I was thankful to my CEO for letting us kind of reshape that after a long period of time. And it was, we make life better. That's where we ended up. We did the five whys of root cause analysis. Okay, it's about providing reliable, affordable. Okay, but why? And then why? Well, when you get down to why, what we do makes life better, makes life easier. And it was so cool to be able to be a part of that. So I would recommend, making sure, from top down, senior leadership, staff management, what are we doing? What is our program designed to do and focus on? Is it filling all these file cabinets? I know that's part of it, but where do we prioritize that? And is it going to be our people? People get tired of my cheesy quotes, but there's a Westinghouse quote that a lot of people use, and I think I don't know if he coined it, but it was, man, take care of your people and they will take care of your product. And so if we can't lose sight of that, even with the rules and regulations and all the things that we need to do, and there's administrative work that needs to be done, I get that. But I would say first and foremost, man, align yourself with management, the values, the goal, the mission, and just try to make sure it's people. We're focusing on our people.
I love the Westinghouse quote because that's what you're after, right? You want that discretional effort that folks put into things, and they have to be motivated. And look, we fall into this trap when we have an event or things aren't going our way where we start to blame the workers. We just trained you on this yesterday. We just had this talk. I just taught you a whole new set of tools. How come you didn't have what you need? It's always like we don't necessarily give enough credit to the crew to say they're doing what they can with what they got in that moment, right? So what we're talking about now in safety management is context driving behavior. It's not easy. It's not as simple to say, oh, they just screwed up. Oh, the worker did something dumb. That's not what happens. We don't hire goofballs. I mean, I'm sure your organization's the same as ours. There are contractors that are NECA members and other employers out there. We don't go out there and go through the whole vetting process and interview process and demonstrated proficiency and onboarding. We don't hire bad people. I mean, maybe a bad apple gets through every once in a while, but generally speaking, we got people that want to come in and build a good product. Like you said, they want to go out there and do the right thing. What happens is they deviate because they have to, right? Construction people, and whether you're on the utility side or as a contractor, we're doing utility construction work. There's things that deviate on the job. The customer's car was in the way. We didn't expect that. We didn't get the outage when we expected to get it. Somebody, schools letting out early because of some issue we didn't plan for. The materials didn't arrive, or maybe we got the wrong materials.
Weather
snap, we got the wrong size pole. We got to run back and get whatever that is. There's deviations that occur, and the last thing we want is our crews to just throw their hands up and say, I'm just going to stop because I don't know what to do next. We want them to deviate, but we want them to deviate in a way that adds safety to the job. And it circles back to what we said about being there. You have to be there to watch these deviations and have that real-time conversation. Say, listen, what? I see what's happening there. Why are you guys doing it that way? And 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be something that organizationally that you can fix. Whether you didn't get the right tool, or your planning process needs some improvement, or maybe your scheduling needs some touches, or whatever. The workers are just out there doing their thing.
That's a really good point. I can't take any credit for this next piece discussion I had with one of our classmates, Jamie Kahn. He and I had this discussion in Texas. Do we really know, Mike? And this is maybe a question that you and I can chew on for the next time. Okay. Do we really know what the total expectation looks like? We talk about setting clear expectations. We talk about making sure that everybody understands their role and their purpose, and a lot of it has to do in our world of safety with inspections and testing things and protocol and procedure. And Jamie just brought up a valid point to me the other day, and it's had us thinking ever since. What does that day look like where we literally do everything we say we're going to do? Not some of it, not part of it, everything. Down from checking my FR at home before I put it on to every aspect of the job throughout the day. Do we really know what that expectation looks like from a time standpoint and also from an accountability standpoint? I think we should have them 100%. Clear expectations is great, but man, if you add them all up, it's a lot.
A lot. Oh, heck yeah.
And that pressure that we could potentially unconsciously put on some of our work crews, that may be a real conversation to have.
You know what it reminds me of? Reminds me of take your standard distribution pole. You put your 3 phases in the neutral up. What do you call that in the co-op world? What's a 3-phase in a neutral?
Oh man,
P1 or P3?
Okay, C1, C1, 2, C1, 3. Yeah,
yeah.
On the framing,
so you're out there doing a C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, and that pole's loaded up. Your engineers put some thought behind how that pole's going to be loaded. They probably applied some NESC loading, storm loading factors to it, and then here comes the telephone company. Here goes one line. There goes another trunk line. There goes another trunk line. Now the fiber guy wants to put fiber on there. Cable TV guy, maybe there's a fire alarm on there. And before you know it, you've done loaded that pole up well beyond what its original expectation was. And the same thing happens with people. And so it sounds good to us. Like, and that's not, how many corrective actions have you seen come out of an event that's like, well, let's add something new. Let's add some new process. Add
new rule.
And you just bury these guys. And so then they can't do any of it because they're, well, what happens, I think, is they start to say, okay, well, I know I can't do all of it. So I'm going to prioritize these things based on what I think is the priority. And if they're, if they don't have, all the information that they need, or they just don't understand how important something is because they just haven't been exposed to it, those kind of things become sacrificial lambs. Just, we're going to do something else.
It's the deviation. It's creating new norms. And you know what happens when you move that line a little bit and make a new normal? You'll see trends start to follow it with accidents or contacts or whatever it may be. And that's kind of where it starts. We create a new norm, unfortunately.
And I think that's what's so important about where safety's headed today, where, we want to get down to the basic elements of safety management, human behavior, and now with human and organizational performance, understanding the influence the organization has on the outcome. It's not just, hey, worker, do what we've told you to do. We give you these error prevention tools, now make it happen. The organization carries some of that water too. And so now we're moving way beyond just thinking, okay, how can we prevent everything, and starting to think about, in the rare case that we can't prevent something, what's our plan B? How have we built this job up where there's capacity, margin for error, resiliency, whatever word you want to use. But just having sort of the ability to fail safely on these job sites is a whole different way of thinking about things, because it's almost, it almost kind of contradicts our, commitment to zero conversations, but not really, right? Because earlier you talked about setting the goal, right? So everybody understands where we're headed. So if that's your commitment, right, we're going to commit to preventing everything that we can. But then if you layer over top of that, the things that sneak through, the things that we just didn't account for because we're human beings and we're going to miss stuff. What is our work plan to absorb that incident? And work area protection comes to mind. I guess it was the last week in April was Work Zone Awareness Week. And during that week, we had that event down your neck of the woods, not too far from you, where the garbage truck came through, and it was a messy event where, we had some loss of life. And it was unfortunately a story we hear way too often. These public right-of-ways, our work area protection, we have crews working, and somebody from the public encroaches, and sometimes our work zone isn't set up the way it's supposed to be. It could be better. Sometimes it's completely out of our control, and the customer came barreling through, whether it was, some sort of, they were just under the influence, or they just had some sort of medical emergency, or distracted, or whatever that is. We can't always rest our laurels on that we've got all our ducks in a row and we're going to prevent these things from occurring. How can we build a little more buffer into that? So and when you're out and about, what kind of things do you guys talk about when you're talking about work area protection?
So yeah, that hit very close to home with us, and I actually know some individuals that were personally connected with that scene and actually lost an employee. So yeah, it was pretty rough week. Um, you know, to just piggyback what you said, it's something that's not even, we see it a lot in work zone protection, obviously because of the exposure to so many outside things, with working in the general public and in that space, the hazards are exponentially increased because of the unknowns. But man, if you think about anything that we do in this industry, man, you can't plan for all of it. It'd be impossible to write the rule for everything in every scenario. That's why the tailgate is so important, about your environment and your surroundings, your hazards, your mitigation or elimination or substitution for those. And the last piece of the hierarchy is PPE, not the first, last. It's the only thing in that triangle that's designed for when everything else breaks down. So a good tailgate, really a good, thorough conversation. And then part of that, a tricky, slippery slope is, you got to make sure that, everybody understands. How do you do that? I sat in a lot of them, Mike. Mikey, you good? I'm good, because pride. I didn't want to say I wasn't good. So it's another challenge, unfortunately, for leadership and crew foremen to change the way they do a tailgate. We talked about it in our journeyman workshop. Who's doing the tailgate? What does it look like? Is it check the boxes, or is it, what do you see? What do you see? Because it's about perspective. And I asked Jamie this from class when we were talking about the other conversation. And I was like, is it okay in our industry for us to use the terminology that you've heard before? In the strive for perfection, we'll reach greatness. Is there a perfect zero? Is it possible to eliminate everything in our space, Mike? I don't think so. But when we strive for that collectively,
that's right,
and we build these bridges and we have these conversations and we're willing to pursue innovation and change and get away from the way we've always done it, man, we'll get great. We'll get great. It may not be perfect, but we'll get great. And to that point, I think, man, tailgates are huge, huge.
Yeah. Well, it's that pursuit. You set, this is our goal. This is where we're. You'll hear people call it a North Star. So you always get your bearing. So whenever I get kind of lost, I can point to my North Star and get the bearing. So that's where we're going to go. And we want to eliminate as much as we can. The work zone was a great one. It's risky business because we're on a public right of way. It's not like a traditional construction environment where you can enter the gate, shut the gate, put the barriers in place so you have one-way traffic and you really control that environment. Or transmission right away where you're out on off road and you have some control there. What our distribution crews are out there working on these public right of ways. The authorities, the communities that you're working in, they're not going to let you shut the road down unless it's like absolutely 100%. That's what's got to happen, huh?
And for a co-op perspective, rural isn't rural anymore. Some of my co-ops are in certain regions. There's still some Smallville. But you look at my co-op in the capital city of Columbia, look at, our other co-ops in Charleston, South Carolina, man, it's not just out in the countryside anymore. The population growth, I think right now, South Carolina's third highest, population growth in the country. People are flooding here. A good and bad problem to have, right? So yeah, that had to change. It couldn't be the way we've always done a work zone setup, or this low volume road, get 2 cars a day. Not anymore, Jack. That's the benefit of having those tailgate briefings and those discussions about what are the hazards of this job, not the one we did yesterday, not the one we're doing tomorrow, this one.
That's right. I love that. And how it evolves over time. What I think the other thing guys get hung up on is they look at the conditions that they had when they first showed up. And they base all their their controls around that, and they don't put enough thought into, well, how's this job going to evolve? So it starts off this way, but at some point, all the configuration is going to be different. what used to be old is going to become new. Energized conductors are going to be moved around. You're going to have bridles, taps, connection points moved. You're going to have these things. It evolves, and so you need to have a crew discussion that talks about that evolution, I think.
Yeah, man. I did a crew visit just the other day with the inspection that I was telling you about. I was a part of, and man, one of the coolest things. They were doing a great job, and they were doing a pretty tricky job. But man, everybody on that crew was talking through every move of in and out of the phases, hands on, hands off, getting on the truck. It was great to see that. So the tailgate doesn't stop. Tailgate doesn't stop. It evolves. We're chattering. I was a foreman for a couple of years. We had a lot of chatter in substation when it came to inspections and biannual inspections and taking things in and out of service. A lot of protocol and procedures. I loved it. I love the call and response and the open communication. It only made us better. And is that something we did years ago? Nope.
Yeah, you know it when you're on a job that's clicking. Yeah. Everybody's dressed right. Shirts are tucked, high and tight. Got all the PPE. Job briefing. It's not just a piece of paper. It's discussion that you have right away.
Yep.
You can see the planning that put in place, the risk management, the barriers, the controls that are put in place. You can see the communication that's happening. And man, I get hairs on the back of my neck stand up when I see that kind of stuff, because that's what we're talking about. Like, safety is not an add-on. Safety's cooked into our trade, our profession. So whatever we can do to get folks to consider that, I think it is a good thing. So we're getting a little long in the tooth on this podcast. So let's close the loop on this one before we set the stage for next month.
Sure, man.
I like to have that conversation with our total expectations. What's that look like? So maybe that'll be our theme. Maybe we'll get some feedback from people listening. We'll have some good stuff for June. But so May's Electrical Safety Month. Maybe we'll finish out. What are you doing for the rest of this month, Micah, to celebrate Electrical Safety Month?
I got quite a few meetings on the books. I'll be on the road at a few locations next week, and then hopefully back out at our school. Got a couple of apprenticeship classes coming up, and then prepping for CLCP, man. That's right. Coming on us. Got a couple.
We might have to do that one live.
Let's go. And then, got a couple of guys in class reaching out about the project, and any chance you can get in the office, this, play a little catch up. So that's the way my few weeks are. Nothing big till CLCP. How about you?
Well, got a couple little things, visits, similar to you. Next week we'll be at the National Cable Splicing Certification Board is having a board meeting. We're trying to raise awareness around having certified cable splicers. Utilities spend a lot of money on putting this cabling in, whether that's terminations or splicing. You want to make sure you have folks that are competent. So we have a certification. So we'll sit down and talk about where that's headed and what we can do to raise awareness around that. But what I'm really excited about is at the end of the month, we're going to have our NECA Safety Professionals Conference. So that's our conference we put on each year. And it's going to be in Des Moines, Iowa. And one of the cool things that we're doing, because our safety conference covers everything in the electrical market, 9 volts to lightning, right? So whether it's a low voltage issue, medium voltage, or dealing with utility issues, we want to make sure we have enough speakers and content to make it relevant. So one of the new things that we did that you'll like is on the last day, we take everybody off site to a training facility. That's what we call outside line folks. So our outside line folks, we're going to take them off site, and we're going to have rope access demonstrations on transmission structures. We're going to have helicopter demonstrations, human external cargo. We're going to have conversations around cranes and aerial lifts, what the differences are and what you need to be thinking about. So really excited about that. And then, like you said, in June we'll be hanging out with the CLCP, and like I said, maybe we'll do a live one there with that group and bring in some guests or something.
Yeah, we could maybe sneak Jamie in there for that conversation about the expectations, because what he and I want to do briefly, just as a tease, we want to actually go find a crew and do it and see what that time frame, see what if we do every single thing that we asked to do, what it looks like. Yeah. I think we may be shocked of what it looks like.
Yeah, it'd be neat to lay it all out there so people understand exactly what the folks are dealing with.
Yep.
Why don't you get us out of here, Micah?
Cool, man. Well, appreciate it, guys. I'll leave us with a piece of history for us from the Lineman Cableman Handbook. It lists out in there, Mike, The first edition came out in 1928, and I have a copy from 1946. And it says the first thing that we have to do to be safety professionals or have a safety mindset is to have self-possession. It's got to start with me. It can't be it's all Mike. Mike's the safety guy. It's listed in the handbook. Self-possession. I have to own it first and foremost and take that accountability. We can't hold anybody to a standard we don't hold ourselves to. So that's what I got.
I love it. All right, folks. Well, tune in next month for Hot Mics with Mike Starner and Micah Thompson. See y'all.